Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Yield to Day with Dallin Candland, the show that helps you dig deep into your life, find those gems that help you have more self compassion towards yourself, and fuel all of your desires and dreams and goals and stuff. Today, we're going to be talking about playing the long game versus playing the short game and how it relates to three things: your vision, the rewards you get, and your network. This is definitely something I've learned a lot about from pondering it over this semester, and I hope that the insights I share with you will be of some benefit to you in your life. As always, if the podcast is helpful for you, definitely follow the podcast. We're putting out a lot of content right now, and I'm definitely enjoying it, and I hope it is of great benefit to you. And there's also a lot of other good content if you go back in the there's a lot of other good content too. If you kind of go back in the episodes, I'm sure you'll find something that kind of speaks to you. So, with that all said, let's just jump right into it. So, vision is so ridiculously important. If you're playing the short game with vision, you're waking up, right? And you have to get a couple assignments done. And that is what your mind is completely riveted and focused on. It's really good to have this intense focus, but when your mind is so completely focused on that, it can be really easy to just kind of get in this like grind mentality, just got to get it done. Whereas if you've kind of prepared a little bit and you've planned it out and you're kind of thinking beyond this moment throughout that day, you're thinking about other things you're going to do, different goals you have, maybe the rewards that we'll talk about later in the episode. You have those things in mind, you're more likely to enjoy the process and just kind of put in the work, because you know what it's all going to lead to. A lot of times I don't want to run, but I know what all the running is going to lead to, and so I run. Sometimes I don't want to write, but I know what the writing is going to lead to, so I write. And sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I don't want to speak up, but I know what that can lead to, and so I speak up. I think a really good example of this real fast with like overall vision is the amazing thing with vision is there's like this real idea in your mind, and there's this perspective you have of where you'd like to be in the future from continuing down that path. You know that you're not going to be stuck at that spot that you've been at, when you got started. You are working towards something else. Vision is super crucial because it just shows that you are working towards. For me, like with vision, it makes me think about like sometimes I have like these moments and I like imagine myself reaching out to people or having all of this confidence and being able to write more books and whatnot. And you know what? Consistent. Evergreen content. A quick example with vision, and I've shared this one before, has to do with appearing on podcasts. It takes a little bit of effort, to make that happen and appear on someone else's podcast and share your story. But the rewards are crazy. And, oh my gosh. Um, There's a lot of ways that having a really good vision can help you out in your life. I think it really is a big I think choosing to have that vision in mind can bless you in your life in so many different ways. I just encourage you to kind of break it down to little things and just kind of thinking a little bit ahead of where you'd like to be by the end of that day or the end of the month or wherever it might be. When I was back in high school, I tried to imagine where I'd be, by the end of high school, and I was trying to imagine what all this work would lead to. And that was very inspirational and helpful for me. And of course, in my prayers, the Lord would also like make things make a lot more sense than they did in my mind, because the Lord has infinite vision, and people that are really kind and everything like that, they have a lot of vision, I feel like, too. They can see beyond the struggles that people are, they're able to work when there's fog up. Kind of going back to the Florence Chidwick, not Elizabeth Chidwick episode from a couple weeks ago. Just having that vision can help you so much with continuing to move forward when you don't know what's going on, as opposed to a short-term vision where once you reach it, you have to create another one. And it's kind of more strenuous. It's a little tiring. I think of myself with doing some of my schoolwork. It's like, okay, I'm going to get this assignment done. It's like, but then what? I have to come up with something. And I think, in short, I think the long-term vision is all about becoming a better person, reaching those goals, and being able to help out more people. Whereas the short-term vision is a lot more self-centered a lot of the time. Just like, I'm just going to get this done. I'm just going to focus on this. I mean, it can be, in a reaching out manner, but a lot of times it's the opposite. The last thing I wanted to mention with vision has to do with long-term. Um, so in short, the long game is like that marathon of life that we're all running in, whereas the short game is kind of a sprint. Like, you can force yourself to do things a couple times, but as James Clear talks about in his book Atomic Habits, it's much more reliable if you set up your environment and the cues and the routines of your habits to help you be focused and basically like break it down to the last thing I wanted to mention really fast about vision is there's this like really cool YouTube video. It's called How Ridiculously Short Your Life Is If You Hate Your Job and Only Live for the Weekends. It's kind of an interesting one. It makes you think about life a little bit differently for me, because every single one of these little gumballs represented like an hour or something like that. And time really is like so precious. And I think when you're playing in the long game, you are making the most of every single minute. You're trying to make the most of the minutes. That's my roommates in the background. It's all good. It's all good. Because like when you're in a really important basketball game and you have that championship, like Pat Summit, who was a really legendary women's basketball coach, that was what she helped her players to do. It's like, we're going to get a national championship. That was a long-term goal, long-term vision. When they had that in mind, they were able to go through those super hard practices. They were able to face her, her wrath to a certain degree, like so they could get better because she pushed them and wanted them to get better. Whereas with the short term focus, you're just really focused on just getting that initial win and just staying in the game. And from my experience, it really helps to continue to affirm a vision to yourself and just to continue to play that long game, because you think about life and there's a lot of uncertainty with it. But one thing that is super certain is that all of your actions and all of your words and everything like that, it's all going to add up to something. And so you get to influence a lot of what that something is. And when you remember that and you keep in mind that you can make your life pretty fantastic over time through simple habits and kindness and charity and maybe starting up your own project to kind of work on, it really helps you to just keep moving forward. And it's amazing because one day I'll play on the long game all day long. And then the next day I'll just kind of like not put as much effort in. Maybe I didn't prepare as well for the practice. And I'm just trying to get through it. So it's just some interesting thoughts there. But obviously the long game's better and a lot more encouraging too. The next thing has to do with rewards, and this thing I could talk about without no problems, without any problems. It's a little late. I did not get much sleep last night, but that is completely okay. We are doing fantastic. But yeah. So number 2 has to do with the rewards that you get, right? So if you're playing the long-term game, you're going to get the long-term rewards. Like Michael Jordan and John Stockton, who I'm reading a book about him right now, they're remembered in basketball history because of their long-term focus and their long-term work. It started when they were pretty young and they just kept working and trying new things. And so they got that reward, and they also got respect on the basketball court and everything like that. As opposed to, say, like a social media feed or something like that, you get some likes, but does that really change your life? No. Hopefully you're influencing and helping people with that, but it doesn't really change anything. And that's kind of insane if you think about it. But kind of a quick example to illustrate this. I was on a podcast, the Run Your Day podcast, back in September. It was probably like September 21st, I think. And I don't really remember much else that I did that day, but I was on that podcast, and that conversation is now on the internet, and anybody can listen to it for a really long time. And everything else that I did that day, most of the stuff I did that day, who even knows? I could find a journal and find out what I did that day. But creating some content, creating something that will live on for a long time and can benefit people, that's playing the long game. I'm sure I could have been doing homework. I'm sure I could have been doing a lot of other things, but I chose to be on that interview and get that practice in. Again, like thinking of the long-term game, I really want to like be in a TEDx talk. I really want to be on a ton of podcasts in the next couple months with my book releasing and all this stuff. And that is all playing the long game. Focusing on the short game and the rewards would be like, yeah, let's just upload another episode and hope it helps some people. And yes, that is been my mindset, sure, a couple times. But I really don't want to post anything unless it's actually helpful. And so, yeah. But I think this is really important. You think of every single day that you go to class for college, you're either working closer to being that A student or farther away from it. And I've definitely felt this with accounting. All of those hours that you don't spend working on it, all those hours you do, it all just kind of adds up, and it's just like tug of war, right? It's just like and you don't really know what's gonna happen. And so it really helps to, again, keep that in mind. It's gonna end, the semester's gonna end. It's not wise to just waste your time and just put yourself in a really poor situation and be like, I'll catch up. Because even though you might be able to catch up, think of all the other things you could be doing, right? So, and the big thing about this too is short-term gratification versus long-term gratification. And the short term obviously is like all the dopamine fixes, just booting up a video game and playing it for no reason, or social media, or I don't think any of these things are bad. It's just if you use them way too much and it replaces more important things, that's obviously bad. And if it's like a reflex, that's also really bad. Whereas like with the long term game, with being able to postpone that gratification, that's like being able to make those posts on your phone and not even get on the app or whatever until you really like actually want to be on there, and just doing that with so much more intention. You will definitely be rewarded by just doing that one little thing. And it doesn't take a ton more effort to do that, to not get on a social media platform unless you're actually going to do something, because they're made to make you wait as long as possible to find what you want to find. And it's just like any kind of jackpot. You could swipe and swipe and swipe and find absolutely nothing, and you'll just wasted a ton of time. But yeah, that's up to you. And if you are able to keep that long-term vision in mind, it is so much easier to be like for me, I really want to finish my book by the end of the month. So it's like every single second I could be working on my book right now, but I have homework and I have podcasting stuff to do. I have interviews. I have an interview I'm doing tomorrow morning, and a lot of other interviews coming soon. And, you know, so it's like I really need to be careful with how I spend my time and how I divvy up my hours, because it's all going to add up. So, but from what I've experienced in my life, just being able to prioritize those long-term goals, whether it's like going on a run, even if I'm really just having a rough day, doing any of those things just is such a good investment in yourself. And I honestly feel really awful when I choose to focus on the short-term reward. Like, I'm just going to go back to sleep for 5 minutes. That's a short-term reward. And there's a long-term payback for that, right? I wake up and I'm like, oh, shoot, I am late for this and that. So that's number two. Just how if you play the long game, the rewards are so much better, but you have to wait longer. That's just kind of how it is. And I feel like that's honestly something I've learned a ton in my life, is be able to hang in the game and keep pressing play when it is seeming like it's not going anywhere, but it is, because you're pressing play, right? You're trying things, you're learning things. I can think of like Donkey Kong Land 1 on the Game Boy. There's this one cloud level, oh, it just came to mind, and I played that level so many times and I just had no idea how to beat it. And then we finally figured it out, and man, it was awesome. Uh, um, um, The reason why I bring up that level is just it required so much patience. It was built to the point where if you tried to run through it, at least when I try to run through it, you can't do it. You have to be very, very, very patient, or else you're just going to die every single time and you're going to get really frustrated. But if you have that vision in mind and you have something to help you keep going, for me, I'm reading Atomic Habits again, so I have that standing up next to my bed. So having little reminders like that can help you a ton. Also, like desktop wallpapers or iPhone wallpapers, all those things can help you so much with remembering that the reward will come. You just gotta put in the time. And again, I mean, my little definition of patience from a couple weeks ago is just patience is the assurance that there will be an abundant harvest, that there will be an abundant harvest. And that's just the law of the harvest. What you reap, you will sow, right? And a lot of things, when you reap them, there's not much left. There's not a lot of things when you reap them, there's not much that comes in the form of fruits, because it's digital or it's whatever. Yeah, it's fleeting. It doesn't last long. So I don't know, just investing in that and keeping in mind the rewards. And I think one more fast thought with the rewards thing is thinking of building up your treasury, like your store of knowledge. That's super powerful too. And that's a really good reward if you've learned these different things and you've prioritized like reading books or working on those things. Like I've learned a ton from social media posts, but most of the learning and growth I've had is from like taking action on different things I've learned in books and videos. And I mean, sure, those posts too, but the posts are a very small part of my diet. You think of like a plate, like the book is like, that's like the meat and potatoes for the most part. And then there's like the self-growth content. There's the self-development content I make. That's pretty helpful for me. But the social media part of it, it's not that big. But I definitely try to do a lot of networking, and that's the final thing as far as this long versus short game thing goes. I think when you meet somebody and you are focused on your own vision, you have just that joy in your soul from working towards a vision. You want that for other people. You want to help them out too. But when you're kind of focused on your own self and you're just like, I just got to get this done and I don't want anybody to get in my way, you're not really focused on anybody else. And it's a lot more difficult to be open and to open up to people, I think. Because, yeah, you kind of come off as like, I need to get this done really fast, pronto. And Vision Rewards Network. Yeah, I think with networking too, there's been a number of people where I meet them and I just know I'm going to run into them again or I'm going to meet them at some other point. And so I really try to just be kind to them because who knows, who knows, I probably will run into them again. And so it's important that I enjoy that experience I get to have with them. I think networking is all about the long game because if you try to force it really quickly, it's not really going to lead to much. People are going to be like really pressured and it's like, wow, you want me to read your book and you want me to do this and that. Like I've had people reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's like, hey Dallin, I love your podcast, You'll Today with Dallin Candland, and I want you to read this thingy I wrote. And I'm like, what? It's like, yeah, I want you to do this and that. And it sends me like 3 paragraphs. It's like, clearly you do not care about the podcast. And if you don't care about the podcast, then you probably don't really care much about me, or maybe you care more about the podcast than me. In any case, when you try to like make this process and just squish it and be like, all right, we're going to get 10 years of networking done in 10 minutes, that just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It has to be done with patience, with care, with understanding, with love for the other person and concern and appreciation for the other person. And it is all a long game thing. Recently, I've been able to talk with Brother Morley, who I had organizational leadership with like a year ago now, and we're really good friends, and I've been able to keep in touch with him. And I actually had him on the podcast, actually. Super good episode. I think it was in the 40s. He worked for Franklin Covey. He has some really awesome insights. But we've been able to keep in touch, and that's a long game thing, And I don't really know what it's going to lead to, but we're trying to help out one another, and that brings a lot of joy. And that's the case of like my relationship with Aaron Denny and with my brother James too. It's this long game thing. You can't. It's all about just helping them out with, basically about helping them out with their growing and their journeys, and not like checking a box, right? I think that's the real key with all of like everything I've said in this episode. the short game is you're just checking a box and you're saying, I did this, and that's great. The long game is doing the thing and being like, this is what I'm working towards, and this is awesome, and I'm going to keep working towards it. And that's me with networking. That's me with pretty much everything. I always try to play the long game because it's a long game. And the fourth quarter, it becomes really clear, like at the end of the year, who's planted in April and who didn't. And I'm definitely one to always be planting seeds, always be trying new things. And yeah, so this was kind of like an all over the place episode, and I do apologize for that. I did have fun recording this. This was the last of the. This isn't the last of the solo episodes, but for the next 10 Mondays, I'm going to try to have an interview up every single Monday, and then I'll have little quick episodes of me talking and sharing stuff on the Thursdays, all the way up to episode number 100 at the end of April. So it'll be a little crazy, be a lot of good stuff coming. I'm going to keep you guys in the loop. And yeah, those three things again were vision, rewards, and network. If you play the long game, you will always win. You'll always be ahead of the game. And it takes a lot of patience. It takes reminders. It takes working with other people. And there's so many other things I could have gone into. But I just appreciate you guys and hope that this episode was helpful for you in some way. And keep up the great work. And yeah, and don't forget to yield today, and it will be a better tomorrow. Okay, well, that was kind of all over the place, but